I never imagined my marriage would end in a courtroom. Not with vows echoing in my ears. Not with framed wedding photos still hanging on the walls of our house. And definitely not with my husband, my cheating husband, standing across from me like I was the criminal. The day he took me to court, he looked confident, almost smug. And that was the moment I knew. This was going to get ugly. But let me take you back to the beginning, before lawyers, before betrayal, before the judge would stare at my husband like he couldn't believe what he was hearing, before my life shattered. I'm Emily Carter. I was married to Daniel Carter for 9 years. 9 years of what I thought was love, loyalty, and sacrifice. We met in our 20s. Daniel was charming, ambitious, and knew exactly how to make me feel seen. He used to bring me coffee at work, leave little notes in my bag, text me just to say, I miss you. I believed in him. In us. When we got married, I gave him everything, my time, my trust, my youth. I supported him through career changes, financial struggles, long nights, and stress that never seemed to end. When he wanted to start his own consulting business, I emptied my savings without hesitation. We're a team, I told him. He smiled, kissed my forehead. I couldn't do this without you. Those words would later feel like a cruel joke. For the first few years, our marriage looked perfect from the outside. Nice house, weekend dinners with friends, social media smiles, vacations we could barely afford but posted anyway. But slowly, things changed. Daniel stopped looking at me the same way. Conversations became shorter. Touches disappeared. He was always busy, always tired, always glued to his phone. If I asked where he was going, he'd sigh like I was annoying him. You're overthinking, Emily. That sentence became his favorite weapon. Then came the late nights. At first, it was work, or at least that's what he said. I have a client meeting. The project deadline is insane. I'll be home late. Don't wait up. I waited anyway. Every night, I'd lie in bed staring at the ceiling, listening to the clock tick, telling myself I was being paranoid, telling myself that good wives trust their husbands. But deep down, something felt off. One night, Daniel came home smelling different. Not like his usual cologne. It was softer, sweeter. I asked casually, did you change your perfume? He froze, just for a second. Then he laughed. You're imagining things. I wanted to believe him. So I swallowed my doubts and kept playing the role of the understanding wife, until the night my world cracked open. It was a Tuesday. I remember because I was making his favorite dinner, lemon garlic chicken, hoping maybe we could finally talk. His phone buzzed on the kitchen counter while he was in the shower. I wasn't snooping. I swear I wasn't. But the screen lit up. I missed last night already. My hands started shaking. I told myself not to jump to conclusions. Maybe it was a joke, a colleague, anything. But my heart knew better. I picked up the phone. The password was our anniversary date. That should have been my first warning. What I saw next destroyed me. Messages, photos, voice notes. A woman named Rachel. She called him baby. She talked about hotels, secret lunches, and how careful they had to be. And then I saw the message that broke whatever strength I had left. When are you going to tell her? I dropped the phone. When Daniel walked into the kitchen, towel around his waist, humming like nothing was wrong, I was sitting at the table staring at the wall. What's wrong with you? He asked. I stood up and held out the phone. Who's Rachel? His face drained of color. For a moment, he didn't speak. Then he sighed, like I was the problem. You went through my phone? That's when I knew. No denial. No shock. No apology. Just anger that he'd been caught. You're cheating on me, I said, my voice barely audible. He ran a hand through his hair. It's not what you think. I laughed. A broken, hollow sound. So you didn't sleep with her? I asked. He didn't answer. That silence screamed louder than any confession. I cried. I begged. I demanded answers. How long? Why? Was I not enough? Daniel looked at me with cold eyes I had never seen before. You've changed, he said. You're always emotional, always complaining. Rachel understands me. Those words cut deeper than any insult. I asked him to leave. Instead, he packed a bag and walked out like he was doing me a favor. No apology. No remorse. Just, I'll call my lawyer. That sentence hit me harder than the cheating itself. I thought the worst part was over. I was wrong. A week later, I received a letter. Not flowers. Not a message. Not even a conversation. A court notice. Daniel was suing me for emotional harassment, for defamation, for damaging his reputation. I read the paper over and over, my hands numb. The man who cheated was taking me to court, claiming I was unstable, claiming I was controlling, claiming I drove him into another woman's arms. I felt sick. Friends started calling. Some whispered. Some distanced themselves. Daniel had already started telling his version of the story, and I was losing control of my own life. That's when I realized something terrifying. Daniel wasn't just leaving me. He was trying to destroy me. And as I stood there holding the court papers, tears streaming down my face, one thought echoed in my mind. If he thinks I'll stay silent, he has no idea who he's messing with. Because what Daniel didn't know was that I had proof, and the truth was about to walk straight into that courtroom with me. But I had no idea how the judge would react when Daniel finally opened his mouth and told his lies under oath. The night after I received the court notice, I didn't sleep. I sat on the edge of my bed, staring at the wall where our wedding photos still hung. Daniel had his arm around me, smiling like I was the best thing that ever happened to him. I wanted to rip the frame off the wall and smash it into pieces, but instead, I just stared. I kept replaying his words in my head. I'll call my lawyer. Like cheating wasn't enough. He wanted to bury me. By morning, I knew one thing for sure. I couldn't handle this alone. I called my older sister, Laura. She listened quietly as I told her everything, the affair, the messages, the lawsuit. When I finished, there was a long pause on the other end of the line. Emily, she said slowly, this man is dangerous. That word, dangerous, sent a chill down my spine. He's not just trying to leave, she continued. He's trying to rewrite reality. That's when it hit me. Daniel wasn't fighting for love. He was fighting for control. Laura helped me find a lawyer. Her name was Margaret Hill, and from the moment I walked into her office, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Margaret was calm, sharp, and didn't sugarcoat anything. He's accusing you of emotional harassment, she said, flipping through the court papers. That's a bold move for someone who had an affair. I swallowed hard. Can he win? She looked straight at me. Only if you let him control the narrative. Then she leaned forward. Do you have proof of the affair? My heart started racing. Yes, I said. Messages. Photos. Voice notes. Margaret smiled faintly. Good. That changes everything. For the first time since Daniel walked out, I felt like maybe, just maybe, I wasn't powerless. But Daniel didn't stop there. 2 days later, he showed up at the house, unannounced. I opened the door, and there he was, well-dressed, confident, like he was heading to a business meeting instead of confronting the wife he betrayed. I'm here to collect some documents, he said casually. You should have called, I replied, blocking the doorway. He smirked. You don't own this place alone. That smirk, it made my stomach twist. As he walked past me, I noticed something that made my chest burn. He was wearing the watch I gave him for our anniversary. You have some nerve, I said. He stopped and turned toward me. Careful, Emily, he said quietly. Everything you say can be used against you now. I stared at him in disbelief. You're really doing this? He leaned closer, lowering his voice. You humiliated me. You told people I cheated. I had to protect myself. I laughed bitterly. You did cheat. That's your opinion, he replied. That was the moment I realized this man had no shame. Before leaving, he turned back and said something that still makes my blood boil. You should settle, he said. The judge won't be kind to an emotional woman. The door closed behind him, and I broke down. The days leading up to court were hell. Daniel's lawyer filed motion after motion, painting me as unstable, jealous, and obsessive. He claimed I monitored Daniel's movements, accused him without proof, and emotionally abused him. Reading those lies felt like being stabbed over and over. Margaret warned me. He's setting the stage. He wants to look like the victim. I nodded, but fear kept creeping in. What if the judge believed him? What if I lost everything? Not just my marriage, but my dignity. That fear followed me all the way into the courtroom. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Daniel sat at the opposite table, his lawyer whispering in his ear. He didn't even look at me. Rachel was there too, sitting behind him. My heart dropped. She was younger, confident, wearing a tight blazer like she belonged there. So this was her, the woman who understood my husband. Margaret placed a hand on my arm. Focus on me, she whispered. Then the judge entered. Everyone stood. As we sat back down, the judge looked over his glasses, scanning the room. And then, Daniel's lawyer began. He spoke smoothly, confidently. Your Honor, my client, Mr. Daniel Carter, endured years of emotional manipulation and harassment by his wife. He was accused of infidelity without proof, publicly humiliated, and emotionally cornered. I clenched my fists. Without proof, my chest tightened as Daniel took the stand. This was the man I once trusted with my life. He looked at the judge and sighed deeply. I loved my wife, he began. But living with her became unbearable. I wanted to scream. She was controlling, he continued. Suspicious. She checked my phone, accused me constantly. I felt trapped. The judge nodded slightly, listening. Every word felt like poison. Daniel glanced at me briefly, his eyes cold. I never cheated, he said firmly. These accusations destroyed my reputation. I felt dizzy. He just lied. Under oath. Margaret scribbled notes furiously beside me. Daniel went on about how I pushed him away, how I was emotionally unstable, how I imagined betrayals that didn't exist. When he finished, his lawyer sat down confidently. I looked at Margaret, my eyes filled with panic. He's lying, I whispered. She met my gaze, calm and steady. I know, she said, and now it's our turn. I stood as Margaret called my name. My legs felt weak as I walked to the stand. The judge looked at me kindly. MRS. Carter, he said, tell the court your side. I took a deep breath. I talked about our marriage, about the changes, about the messages. Daniel's lawyer jumped in quickly. Did you invade your husband's privacy by checking his phone? Yes, I said honestly, but only after months of suspicious behavior. He smirked. So you admit to controlling behavior? Before I could answer, Margaret stood. Objection, Your Honor. Mischaracterization. The judge nodded. Sustained. Daniel's lawyer frowned, but then he leaned in for the kill. MRS. Carter, he said sharply. Do you have concrete proof that my client cheated? The room went silent. Every eye turned to me. My heart pounded. This was it. I reached into my bag and pulled out a folder. Yes, I said. Daniel's head snapped toward me, and for the first time since this nightmare began, I saw fear in his eyes. But what I was about to reveal would not only expose his lies, it would make the entire courtroom gasp. The courtroom felt like it stopped breathing. I held the folder in my hands, my fingers trembling, not from fear anymore, but from the weight of the truth inside it. Daniel stared at me like he was seeing a ghost. His confident posture collapsed just slightly, but enough for me to notice. The judge leaned forward. Proceed, Mrs. Carter. Margaret stood beside me. Your Honor, with the court's permission, we would like to submit evidence directly contradicting Mr. Carter's testimony. Daniel's lawyer jumped up. Objection. We haven't reviewed. The judge raised a hand. You will. Sit down. That single sentence felt like a small victory. Margaret nodded at me. I opened the folder. Inside were printed screenshots, messages, timestamps, photos. Clear. Undeniable. Exhibit A. Margaret said calmly. Text messages exchanged between Mr. Carter and Ms. Rachel Moore over a period of 11 months. A murmur rippled through the courtroom. Daniel's jaw tightened. I spoke slowly, carefully, forcing my voice to stay steady. These messages were sent while Daniel and I were still living together. While he told me he was working late. While he told me I was paranoid. Daniel's lawyer approached. Your Honor, these could be fabricated. Margaret didn't miss a beat, which is why we also have phone records from Mr. Carter's service provider, verifying the dates and times. The judge's eyebrows lifted. Daniel swallowed hard. I continued. Exhibit B, I said, flipping a page. Hotel receipts. Booked under Daniel's business account. That's when Rachel shifted in her seat. I saw it. Her confident posture cracked. The judge looked toward Daniel. Carter, he said slowly. You testified under oath that you never cheated. Daniel opened his mouth. Nothing came out. His lawyer leaned over, whispering urgently. But the damage was already done. Margaret wasn't finished. Your Honor, she said. We also have voice recordings. Daniel snapped his head up. What? I pressed play. His voice filled the courtroom. I can't leave her yet. She still believes me. Just be patient. Rachel's face went pale. The judge's expression hardened. I felt something shift in the room, like the truth had weight, and it was pressing down on everyone. Daniel stood abruptly. This is taken out of context. The judge glared at him. Sit down. Daniel sat. I could barely recognize the man across from me now. Then came the moment I never expected. Daniel's lawyer tried to regain control. MRS. Carter, he said sharply. Isn't it true that you threatened my client after discovering these messages? I frowned. Threatened him? Yes, he said. Didn't you say you would ruin his life? I took a deep breath. I said I would tell the truth, I replied. The judge nodded slightly. Margaret stepped in. Your Honor, may I remind the court that Mr. Carter is the one who initiated legal action, claiming emotional harassment. She paused. Yet he was simultaneously carrying on an affair and lying under oath. Silence. Heavy, uncomfortable silence. The judge turned to Daniel. M.R. Carter, he said. Do you wish to revise your testimony? Daniel looked at his lawyer, then at Rachel, then at me. His lips pressed into a thin line. No, he said. That was his mistake. The judge sighed and leaned back in his chair. Very well, he said. Then we will proceed. Rachel was called to the stand. She hesitated, then stood. As she walked past me, I noticed her hands shaking. Margaret's voice was calm, almost gentle. Ems. More, she began. How long have you known Mr. Carter? Rachel glanced at Daniel. About a year, she said. Were you aware he was married? Rachel hesitated. Daniel stared at her intensely. Yes, she whispered. A gasp echoed through the courtroom. Daniel's lawyer jumped up. Objection. Overruled. The judge said sharply. Rachel continued, her voice trembling. He told me his marriage was over, that they were just roommates. I laughed softly, bitterly. The judge looked at her. Did he ever tell you he was being emotionally abused? Rachel swallowed. No. Daniel's face went red. Margaret took a step closer. Did Mr. Carter ever encourage you to stay silent about the relationship? Rachel nodded. Yes. And did he ever say why? She hesitated again. He said it would hurt his case. That sentence hit like a bomb. The judge's eyes narrowed. His case? He repeated. Rachel nodded slowly. Yes. He said if anyone knew, he'd lose everything. I felt my chest tighten. Daniel hadn't just cheated. He planned this. By the time Rachel stepped down, the courtroom felt like a pressure cooker. Daniel looked furious at her, at me, at the world. Margaret rested her case. Daniel's lawyer requested a recess. The judge agreed. As everyone stood, Daniel finally looked at me. Really looked. There was no arrogance left, only desperation. You think you've won? He hissed as he passed me. I met his gaze calmly. No, I said. I think you've told enough lies. He stormed away. In the hallway, Margaret pulled me aside. He's cornered, she said quietly. People like him don't go down quietly. I nodded, my heart racing. What happens next? I asked. She took a deep breath. The judge is not happy, she said. And when we go back and things could turn very ugly for Daniel. We returned to the courtroom. The judge took his seat. He looked directly at Daniel. Amar. Carter, he said firmly. Before I rule on this matter, I have a few questions of my own. Daniel straightened. This was it. The moment everything would change. And as the judge opened his mouth, I realized Daniel's own arrogance had walked him straight into a trap he couldn't escape. The judge folded his hands on the bench and looked directly at Daniel. Not like a man judging another man, but like someone deeply disappointed. Mr. Carter. The judge said slowly, you came before this court claiming to be the victim. Daniel nodded stiffly. Yes, Your Honor. The judge's voice sharpened. You claimed emotional harassment. You claimed false accusations. You claimed your reputation was damaged. He paused. And yet, the evidence presented suggests a very different story. The courtroom was so quiet I could hear my own heartbeat. The judge turned a page in his notes. Let me be very clear, he continued. Lying under oath is a serious matter. Daniel swallowed hard. Do you understand that, Mr. Carter? Yes, Your Honor, he replied, his voice strained. The judge leaned back slightly. Then tell me, he said, why this court should believe anything you've said so far. Daniel's lawyer jumped up. Your Honor, my client. The judge raised a hand. I asked Mr. Carter. Daniel stood slowly, adjusting his tie like it might save him. I was under extreme emotional stress, he said. My marriage was falling apart. I made mistakes. Mistakes. That's what he called it. The judge's eyes hardened. Mistakes are forgetting an anniversary, he said. Not orchestrating an affair while accusing your spouse of abuse. A murmur swept through the courtroom. I felt my legs go weak. For the first time, someone in authority was saying out loud what I had lived through in silence. Then the judge asked the question that changed everything. Mr. Carter, he said, who advised you to file this lawsuit? Daniel hesitated. My lawyer, he said. The judge glanced at Daniel's attorney, who suddenly looked uncomfortable. Did you disclose your affair to your legal counsel before filing? The judge asked. Daniel froze. Rachel's eyes widened. I held my breath. No, Daniel admitted quietly. The judge closed his eyes for a moment, like he was trying to stay calm. So, he said slowly, you withheld critical information while asking this court to rule in your favor. Daniel nodded. That borders on abuse of the legal process, the judge said flatly. Daniel's lawyer whispered urgently, but it was too late. Then came the moment I never expected. The judge turned to me. MRS. Carter, he said gently, how did this lawsuit affect you? My throat tightened. I stood. It shattered me, I said honestly. I was already grieving my marriage. Then he tried to take my voice, my dignity. I paused, my voice trembling. I supported him for years. I trusted him. And when I found the truth, he punished me for it. The judge nodded slowly. Thank you, he said. Then he looked back at Daniel. Carter, he said firmly. Do you understand the impact of your actions? Daniel looked at me. For a split second, I saw something flicker in his eyes. Regret. But it vanished just as quickly. I did what I had to do, he said. Gasps echoed. The judge's expression changed completely. Cold. Final. I have heard enough, the judge said. Daniel's lawyer stood. Your Honor, we request. Denied. The judge snapped. My heart pounded. The judge adjusted his glasses and spoke clearly. This court finds that Mr. Daniel Carter filed a frivolous and malicious lawsuit. Daniel's face went white. The evidence overwhelmingly supports Mrs. Carter's claims of infidelity, the judge continued, and demonstrates a deliberate attempt to manipulate the legal system. Rachel covered her mouth. Daniel looked like he might collapse. And because Mr. Carter knowingly lied under oath, the courtroom erupted in whispers. The judge banged his gavel. Order. I felt dizzy. Was this really happening? The judge leaned forward. I am referring this matter to the appropriate authorities for further review, he said. Daniel's knees buckled slightly. This wasn't just about losing the case anymore. This was about consequences. But the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, he said, this court is considering sanctions. Daniel's lawyer stood again, panic in his voice. Your Honor. The judge cut him off. Sit down. I gripped the edge of the table. The judge turned to Margaret. Counselor, he said, do you wish to pursue damages for emotional distress and legal fees? Margaret looked at me. This was my decision. For a moment, I hesitated. I thought about the nights I cried alone. The lies. The humiliation. The lawsuit meant to silence me. I looked at Daniel. He avoided my eyes. Yes, I said firmly. Margaret nodded. We do, Your Honor. The judge wrote something down. Very well, he said. Daniel's lawyer slumped into his chair. As the judge prepared to adjourn, Daniel suddenly stood. This isn't fair, he shouted. Gasps filled the room. Order, the judge roared. Daniel pointed at me, his voice cracking. She set me up. She wanted revenge. I stood slowly. No, I said calmly. I wanted the truth. The judge stared at Daniel. Mr. Carter, he said sharply. One more outburst and you will be removed. Daniel sat down, shaking. I felt something inside me shift. The fear that had controlled me for months was gone. In its place, clarity. Court was adjourned. As people filed out, whispers followed Daniel. Rachel disappeared without looking back. Margaret squeezed my hand. You were strong, she said. I nodded, barely able to process everything. But as I gathered my things, I noticed Daniel still sitting there alone. He looked up at me, and for the first time, he looked scared. As I walked past him, he whispered something I never expected to hear. I didn't think the judge would react like this. I stopped, turned to him. Neither did I said. But lies have a way of catching up. I walked out of the courtroom, sunlight hitting my face. I thought it was over. I was wrong, because the judge's final decision and the fallout that followed would shock everyone, including me. Climax plus resolution. I thought walking out of that courtroom would feel like victory, like relief, like freedom. Instead, it felt like standing at the edge of a cliff, waiting to see what would happen next. Because when the judge called everyone back into the courtroom later that afternoon, the air felt heavier than before. This wasn't just about marriage anymore. This was about accountability. Daniel sat at his table again, shoulders slumped, eyes hollow. The confident man who once smirked at me across our dining table was gone. In his place sat someone who finally understood that control doesn't last forever. The judge cleared his throat. This court has reached its final ruling. Every sound disappeared. First, the judge said, Mr. Daniel Carter's claims of emotional harassment and defamation are hereby dismissed with prejudice. Dismissed. With prejudice. Meaning he could never bring them back. Daniel's lawyer closed his eyes. I felt my chest loosen for the first time in months. Second, the judge continued. This court finds that Mr. Carter acted in bad faith by initiating legal proceedings while knowingly concealing his extramarital affair. The judge looked directly at Daniel. You used this court as a weapon against your spouse. Daniel opened his mouth. The judge raised a hand. No, he said. You've had enough chances to speak. Then came the sentence that made the entire courtroom gasp. Mr. Carter is ordered to pay all legal fees incurred by Mrs. Carter. Rachel, who had returned to sit quietly in the back, stiffened. Daniel's face drained of color, but the judge wasn't finished. Additionally, he said, this court awards Mrs. Carter compensatory damages for emotional distress. I felt Margaret's hand squeeze mine. Tears burned in my eyes, not because of the money, but because someone finally acknowledged the pain Daniel tried to deny. And finally, the judge said, his voice firm and unyielding, due to Mr. Carter's false testimony under oath, this court formally refers the matter for perjury review. The word echoed. Perjury. Daniel's head dropped. For the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt closure. Court was adjourned. This time, when I stood, my legs didn't shake. People looked at me differently now. Not with pity, not with doubt, but with quiet respect. Daniel didn't approach me. He couldn't. Margaret whispered, it's over. I nodded. But life doesn't magically fix itself after justice. The real healing came later. In the weeks that followed, Daniel lost more than the case. His consulting firm quietly cut ties with him. Clients didn't like scandal, especially not one tied to dishonesty and court misconduct. Rachel disappeared from his life just as quickly as she entered it. I heard through mutual friends that she felt misled. I didn't feel sorry for her. I felt free. Daniel tried to call me once. Just once. I didn't answer. Some conversations don't deserve a reply. I sold the house. The same house where I cried myself to sleep, where lies filled the air, where love slowly died. I moved into a smaller place, quiet, warm mine. I started therapy. I learned something important there. Betrayal doesn't just break your heart. It makes you question your reality. Daniel tried to convince the world, and me, that my pain was imaginary. But the courtroom gave me something I didn't know I needed. Validation. One afternoon, months later, I ran into Daniel by accident at a grocery store. He looked older, smaller. He hesitated before speaking. I never meant for it to go that far, he said quietly. I looked at him. Really looked. You did, I replied. You just never thought there would be consequences. He nodded slowly. I lost everything, he said. I didn't smile. I didn't gloat. I lost myself once, I said. And I found her again. That was the difference between us. I walked away. And for the first time in years, I didn't look back. Here's what I learned, and why I'm telling you this story. People who cheat don't always feel guilt, but people who lie, manipulate, and play victim eventually expose themselves. Truth doesn't need revenge. It just needs patience. Daniel thought the courtroom would protect him. Instead, it revealed him. And the judge's reaction? It didn't just shock everyone. It set me free.